Hi there and welcome to another video for APUS History. I'm your APUSH Lady Boss and today we're going to be discussing topic 3.9, the Constitution. You can click below and grab a link to some guided notes to follow along as we go through this video. So as always, we want to stay focused on the learning objective provided to us from the College Board. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the continuities and changes in the structure and functions of the government with the ratification of the Constitution. So if you're just coming to me from the previous lesson, 3.8, the next couple slides might be a bit of a review, but it's still really important to put into context the information that we're talking about when discussing the importance of the Constitution for APUS history. So here is the main thing that we're trying to understand. We want to look at how the Constitutional Convention created a limited but dynamic central government embodying the principles of federalism, separation of powers, checks and balances, those types of things. So we're going to do the historical context, the structure, and then look specifically at these various components. So what we're talking about here is the Articles of Confederation that had been in existence kind of beginning during the Revolutionary War. And it becomes apparent that these are not going to be effective enough to run a country made up of this wide variety of people groups and also just the large expanse of the nation in general. So we see this become apparent through things like Shays' Rebellion, issues with trade between states, financial crises that are inhibiting trade between other nations. And so Washington is going to call for a conference at his home where they will determine that the articles need to be revised. And so then they call for a convention in Annapolis. And after this, we see Shays' Rebellion really making it apparent that maybe revisions aren't just necessary, but a complete replacement. And so what happens next is the setup of the Constitutional Convention held in Philadelphia. We see that all states go except for Rhode Island. Rhode Island is extremely avoidant of any type of revisions that would give more power to the federal government. So they don't send any delegates here. So we have 55 delegates, all white male, and mostly in the higher class of the colonies or of the states. We see mostly college educated, but we do see some pretty major groups that are absent and also some people that were not there. John Jay, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, John Hancock, Patrick Henry. We also know that no women, African Americans, or American Indians were present. So George Washington becomes the chairperson of the convention, while James Madison, who becomes known as the father of the Constitution, plays a really important role in creating this new document. Probably our most famous image here from the Constitutional Convention, looking fairly peaceful with some people just listening and raising hands, when in reality it was a pretty contentious affair. Okay, so let's start in on the components of the Constitution. First is the preamble. This is the brief introductory statement of the Constitution's fundamental purposes and guiding principles. So if we look here, there are 6 major principles that are listed in this preamble. It says, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union," not a perfect union, a more perfect union, "establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty." These are the main objectives of this new document. So let's discuss federalism, one of the most important components of the Constitution. This is the system where power is going to be divided between the national government and the state governments and also local governments. But there are some powers that are also shared. These are going to be called concurrent powers. So things like levying taxes. Levying taxes under the Articles of Confederation was basically solely held by state governments. But now in the Constitution, that power is going to be both allowed by state and federal governments. So then you can see that there are different parts of government as well. So the national government will include Congress, president, federal courts and agencies, and so on. So we see not only that power is going to be divided, but also the government is going to be separated into these 3 aspects: national, state, and local. Then we have separation of powers. This is the division of power within government between the branches, each with separate independent powers and responsibilities. The goal is to make sure that no branch takes too much power or acts like the British government did, similarly to a tyranny. So, what we see is that the legislative branch is primarily responsible for making laws, the executive branch enforcing laws, and the judicial branch evaluating those laws. And there are other powers that they have as well, but those are the primary ones that we think about in regards to our branches of government. Moving on, checks and balances. This is the ability for each branch to check on or regulate the other branches to prevent tyranny from taking place. So, when we think about the passage of a law, here are some examples of how checks and balances might work. So, the legislative branch might make the law, but the executive branch could then veto it. The legislative branch can make laws, but the judicial branch could make it unconstitutional. If the executive branch vetoes the law, the legislative branch can override the veto. So there you can see the relationship between the branches of government in just this one aspect. Other things like impeachments and who gets to make appointments, all of those things are ways that the branches check on each other to prevent too much bureaucracy, too much power being given to one particular branch. Some other key aspects here of the Constitution include the Electoral College. So this is going to be the people who actually formally cast votes for the president and vice president. Then there's popular sovereignty. This is the idea that all power and authority to govern is in the people. So the people have the power to rule and govern, and this is shown through their ability to elect their representatives. Limited government and rule of law. Government is not free to do whatever they want. They are restricted by law. They are restricted by the Constitution. And no one is above the law. Even the president must follow the laws set forward in this nation. Judicial independence. So this is the one branch of government that does not have term limits. So when judges are appointed, instead of being elected, it is for a lifetime. And it doesn't mean that all judges are going to die in office. It just means they will retire versus hitting the end of their term according to a term limit. And this is to ensure that justices don't reflect popular opinion necessarily, but that they are free from political influence and they are based on their interpretation of the Constitution. The last part is the flexibility. And there are many other aspects to the Constitution, but these are the last ones that we are going to be discussing. So flexibility is that the Constitution can meet all the changing conditions through the elastic clause. The government has the power to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying out the Constitution. And then the Constitution can also be changed through the amendment process. So we have seen this happen through 27 amendments in our nation's history, showing that it does have the ability to change based on the needs of the country. So I hope this has shown you some different ways that the Constitution has maintained some of the aspects of the Articles of Confederation while also having some pretty stark changes. So I hope this was helpful for you in better understanding the Constitution. And if so, please like and subscribe.